Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. Today I have a review for you of a pistol that it's been asked of me several times. This is not mine, I borrowed it from a buddy of mine. And there's about a total of 500 rounds on this gun at this point. So this is by no means a all-encompassing like reliability and long-term review. But that is of the Palmetto State Armory Dagger. Let's get into it. So it should be fair to note that I don't have a relationship with Palmetto State Armory. I'll never have a relationship with Palmetto State Armory, ever. I've turned down relationship offers from them before through affiliate stuff. And I have had nothing but, well, with the exception of one piece, nothing but bad experiences with them. A 10.5 AR that was a non-functioning, incorrectly put together pile of crap when I got it. A 16-inch Freedom rifle that never made it through a single magazine without malfunction, misfeeds, things like that. And then I had the GB2, I think it was called, AK that they did. That was okay. It was nothing special. It wasn't particularly nice, but it was okay for the money. I've also had super horrible experiences with the company itself. So I know that I'm giving ammo to the people that are going to talk shit in the comment section at this point, but just know that I'm not a fanboy. This is not going to be one of those solid IV of copium videos that you so often see when it comes to Palmetto State Armory reviews, and I'm certainly not sponsored by AAC and giving you my honest opinion. With that said, there are a bunch of things about this pistol that I like, and there are a bunch of things about this pistol that I don't like. So let's get into those. So going into this review, I have to go into it in a couple different ways that I don't normally do, because I don't have the trigger time behind this that I do other guns. So with that said, there's a bunch of stuff about this gun that I like, and there's a bunch of stuff that I think is an absolute atrocity to the gun world. And I have to go into this in a particular way of sort of, I have to take into consideration, or I am taking into consideration, what I've heard about the Palmetto State Armory. There is an almost religious following, iconic, this is almost like the golden statue to some people. And I have to look at this impartially and say, is this A, better than a Glock 19? B, is it worth the praise that it gets from the fanboys? So those are two important things that I'm looking at when it comes to this particular pistol. Again, there are things about this that I like, there are things about this that I don't like. It's essentially a Glock 19 knockoff. I wouldn't call it a clone because it is not 100% Glock parts compatible, and it is not 100% Glock holster compatible. The nice holsters out there, the high quality holsters like Works and others that are precision fit holsters, this does not fit those holsters, but some of your cheaper, less quality holsters, it may fit, and then there's Polymer 80 and stuff like that, and there are some companies out there that are making holsters for it at this point. But that being said, it's not 100% Glock part compatible, it's not 100% Glock holster compatible, so I would not call it a clone, I would call it a knockoff. So let's start with what I like about it. What I like about it is basically everything on the top. You can almost split this in half. Everything on the top I like, everything on the bottom I don't. So the slide. The slide, I think, is very nice. It has very good machining, it has good coating, and it's aesthetically pleasing. The entire gun, in fact, is aesthetically pleasing, which is, I think, one of the selling points for it, along with the low price of it. But the slide itself is aesthetically pleasing. It has nice cuts in it, has nice windows in it, has nice lightning cuts in it. It has a bull barrel, or I'm sorry, a bull nose in the front of the slide, which I do like the look of a bull nose slide. It has reasonably usable front slide serrations. I would have not made the top end of the slide serrations shallower as they did, but it is still usable. And then the ones on the back, this being an optic cut slide, the ones on the back, there's fewer serrations, but they are deeper, and you're able to, really get a hold of them. Some of the cuts in the top of it and some of these little fish scale type cuts in the back are aesthetically pleasing, and I think it's an overall nice looking slide, and it has fit the Grit Grips frame and my G19 Gen 3 frame just fine and functions. Going to the barrel seems to be accurate in my experience, and it does have a minor crown on the end of the barrel. So there's just a slight taper in on the very end of the barrel. So I think that's a little bit of forward thinking there. So I do like that. And of course, being optic cut, keeping up with the times, being optic cut is nice. And I believe this is a metal cover plate. Now it does have a metal guide rod in it and a very, very stout recoil spring. Now, with that said, when I first felt this, I thought, well, that's a pretty heavy spring. It is a lot heavier than what's in any of my Glocks. And I thought, there's no way this isn't a soft shooting gun, because with a spring that heavy, it has to absorb a ton of the recoil. Jesus Christ. Fucking hold on to that thing. And I was wrong. But we'll get into how this functioned and the snappiness and all that here in a minute. At the back of the slide is your fairly standard cover plate. It's completely smooth. It does not have the anti-glare cuts in it. I'm sure that's just one of those things that PSA didn't do in order to help with cost. So moving down into the nose of the frame, you have a accessory rail here. Now this accessory rail, the height of it is the reason that this is not Glock holster compatible. Hence why I call it sort of a Glock knockoff instead of a Glock clone. But it does fit all the lights. I've put lights on, I put the TLR7 on it, TLR7A and the X300 and the TLR1HL on it. Everything fit and functioned just fine. All right, moving back from there, there's these, I'm gonna call them pretend thumb ledges. This is really the first point of which I go, why I like scratch my head on it, is these thumb ledges are sort of thumb ledges by suggestion only. They look like thumb ledges, but they don't act as a very good thumb ledge. They're completely smooth. They don't have a ledge to speak of. So every other grip manufacturer, Grit Grips, Lone Wolf, Polymer 80, Lift Free Armory, they all have some sort of an aggressive ledge there because it's meant for you to dig your thumb into in order to help mitigate recoil. Palmetto State Armory said, nah, we'll pretend we're putting that in there, but they're really useless. I can push as hard as I can into the side of that, and I just slide right off of them. There's no grip texture, there's no ledge. It's just a swoopy design in the frame. Moving back, it is just a single side mag release, just like a Gen 3, and then it has a single-sided slide stop slide release on it. And this slide stop slide release is a thinner material. It's not as substantial, it's not as nice as an OE Glock one. Again, sort of, I'm guessing, is to cut down costs by using a little chintzier, a little flimsier materials there. Moving down into the trigger. The trigger is another head scratcher for me. So like I said, I sort of keep in mind the almost godlike religious following that this thing has on the internet. And I hear people say that PSA listens to the consumers, right? So I have to scratch my head why the pistol is still coming with this hinged trigger. Smith & Wesson knew this was a bad idea years ago. They threw them all in the dumpster. Nobody liked the hinged trigger, so Palmetto State Armory said, why put a flat face trigger in it? Because that's what people actually want. Let's go dumpster diving in Smith & Wesson's dumpster. And so they put this in there. However, does it function well? It has functioned reliably, but it is not as nice as a Glock OE trigger. It is nowhere near as nice as a OE Glock trigger. And again, that's one of those places where I keep hearing that PSA is, they listen to the consumers. People complain about Glock triggers all the time. I would have thought that they would have attempted to put a better trigger in this than what they did. Moving down to the trigger guard. The trigger guard is another head scratcher for me. They put a very nice single undercut in the crook of the trigger guard here. And then they skipped the double undercut and went to a double front cut, double undercut, double front cut of the trigger guard here. Now, while it looks aesthetically pleasing because it's got nice curves, right? Nobody actually teaches to wrap your finger in front of the trigger guard. So I would have rather seen them spend the money on keeping that flat or a single curve like a Glock trigger guard and putting that effort into a double undercut that is actually advantageous to the shooter versus this fancy swoopy stuff in the front that's not advantageous to the shooter. All right, so moving back from there, you get into the mag release. The mag release, another, is a very plain piece. There is no stippling or cross section in it, no scallops like what's in an OE Glock mag release. And I have heard from other reviewers that it is very spongy and more difficult to use, and I would agree with that. It's just not a high quality piece, and it doesn't have high quality function. However, they did put a scallop in the frame itself, in the polymer of the frame itself, and that helps you with that mag release. Skipping past the grip panels for now, it does have a little bit longer beaver tail than what a Glock does, so awesome there. Less of a chance of slide bite. Now going down into the grip texture itself. The grip texture is, again, sort of, it's sort of an idea. It looks like grip texture, but it does not necessarily feel like grip texture. There's a lot of very, very good grip textures out there on basically every other aftermarket frame. Again, I'm going to mention Grit Grips, Lone Wolf, Polymer 80. There's a ton of really good grip texture here, and people complain about how smooth Glock's grip texture is. And so Palmetto State Armory said, we can make it smoother. And that's what they did here. Not only is it a very, very smooth grip texture, but it's not in the areas that most people complain about. So people like the grip texture to run higher up into the beaver tail. They skipped that. They like it to run higher up into the frame here. They skipped that. Again, all of this probably in a way to cut costs. I understand that. I'm just pointing out that what actual shooters ask for and talk about versus what's on here. So the grip texture, again, it looks like grip texture. It gives the frame kind of cool lines, like aesthetic. The whole gun's aesthetically pleasing. It gives the grip cool lines, but as far as functionality, it's pretty much a fail. Moving forward to the front of the grip, they put a massive speed bump there. And again, this is one of those I don't understand head scratchers where people say they listen to the consumers. People complained for years through Gen 3 and Gen 4 that they don't like the finger grooves, right? I don't personally care, finger grooves or no finger grooves. Where I stop, where I care is make up your mind. Either finger grooves or no finger grooves. Because this admittedly probably is subjective to my hand size. When I grab this pistol, that giant speed bump is right almost in the middle of my middle finger and just digs and digs and digs. Super unpleasant to shoot. Now, why does that bother me, but a row of finger grooves not bother me. So I would liken it to the experiment I'm sure we've all seen somewhere down the road. I think Mythbusters did it and a couple other people, but where you drive over a series of speed bumps at speed and it feels far smoother than driving over a single speed bump at the same speed. To me, when it's all the finger grooves, my hand just lays over top of them and it feels the same down the front of it, whether there's finger grooves there or not. With this single finger groove, it's protrudes so far and actually at quite an extreme point that it just digs right into that middle finger. And honestly, it's probably a good thing they did put this undercut there, because if it wasn't, it would be probably directly in the middle of my middle finger and virtually unbearable. So this brings me down to the end of the grip, the mag well that has these big cutouts here. Now these are mag stripping cutouts. I do like cutouts in grips. I think these are a little big, a little exaggerated, but absolutely useful. And so I think that these are advantageous to a shooter that, especially dealing with flat base plates, if they need to aggressively strip a mag, they're there. Awesome. And this brings me to the last part of the grip, which is the grip material itself. The grip material itself, this polymer feels like SIG polymer, like really, really cheap polymer. It doesn't feel as dense, it doesn't feel as tough as Lone Wolf polymer, as Grit Grips polymer. It doesn't feel as tough as Glock polymer. It feels like a cheap polymer, like what SIG uses. Very easy to scratch and ding up and things like that. So again, I'm sure that process of making this a cheaper polymer helps to make the gun less expensive. So let's get into my experience shooting this thing. Somehow or another they took a like duty size, or at least compact, pistol and made it shoot like a micro gun, like snappy. You would think with that like really strong spring in there that that it would soften it, but it shoots like my 43. So when it comes to shooting this, again, I have about 300 rounds through it, so it's not a lot. It's very little. Normally I do reviews around 1,000 rounds. It was reliable, and that was first and foremost. So I do know the history of these guns. They were extremely problematic when they came out, with trigger pins walking, failure to feed, failure to eject, just a number of issues, which again is sort of par for the course for Palmetto State Armory. It normally takes them, they release something, it doesn't work for a damn, and then they change 2 or 3 things on it, and then it starts working better. That's pretty standard fare for PSA. And this one was no different. I don't know when this one exactly came out, but I have not had any failures for ammo, and I have not had the trigger pin walking out, which are, again, 2 things that were problematic with the early runs of this pistol. So for 300 rounds, the reliability has been spot on. For 300 rounds, the accuracy has been pretty good. Now, shootability is not great for me. I go back to the recoil spring. The recoil spring being so heavy, I really thought that it was going to shoot softer. This thing shoots like shit. And this thing felt really snappy over a stock Glock 19 to shoot. I don't know why. There's something happening in here that that's making it do that, but I could feel like there was a significant amount of like nerve damage type pain. Reminded me of shooting some of the shields, some of the earlier shields that were so snappy. This snaps like a micro gun, like a micro 9mm. So as far as shootability, I don't think it shoots as well as a stock Glock 19. Now, fit and finish, again, this is a very aesthetically pleasing firearm. It has cool curves. They did really cool stuff to it that, whether or not it does you any good as far as positive effects of gun handling, is up for debate, but it's a cool looking firearm. It has a bunch of the slide upgrades and things like that that a lot of people do, especially when going to optics, and then some of the stuff in the frame done that people pay extra money for. However, the slide to frame fit on this is pretty awful. Now, not here, not, while it's all the way on, but when assembling it, when putting the slide on, the front rails are so sloppy to the slide that, there's significant torque that can be done side to side with this slide. And when I say put together a Glock, I line up the front rails and I whoop, and I just put it right on, right? This, stops. I kind of have to line it up and push it down, and then I can rack it the rest of the way on. Now, I did not have that problem with this slide on the Grit Grips frame or on my Glock 19 frame. So that issue resides in the frame itself, or actually in the slide rails or of the frame rails of the frame. Like every shot, I feel every corner of this fucking frame. Like that stupid finger groove, this lip on the bottom of the mag well, like every shot I feel something else. Like that makes this just more unenjoyable to shoot. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is pretty standard for any time I talk about PSA products. This is what I expect from PSA. It's a fairly low quality firearm that leaves you plenty of monetary wiggle room to upgrade it with parts that are actually good, to upgrade it with parts that actually have some semblance of quality, to give you a well-functioning firearm that's probably going to last you a very long time. So at the end of the day, is this better than a Glock 19 Gen 3 pistol to pistol, firearm to firearm? No, not even close. It doesn't even come near it. It's not put together as well. It doesn't have as substantial parts. It doesn't shoot as nice, doesn't have as nice of a trigger, and so on and so on. So no, it's not. It has lower quality parts, lower quality build quality, worse trigger, everything that I just said. However, if I could recommend something on this, it would be everything on the top. So if somebody said, hey, Matt, where can I get a slide that's cut super cool, optics cut and things like that? This is a slide that, based off my experience with this one, I can absolutely recommend to people. And that's a tough pill for me to personally swallow, to recommend anything from Palmetto State Armory, honestly. The frame, and basically everything in the frame, with the exception of a little bit longer beaver tail and these cutouts for the mag, the frame is a complete miss for me. I don't get it. I don't understand why they did this. I don't understand anything about it. Like, there are so many things that they could have done that would have been advantageous to the shooter that they did not do. Now, if the slide is something that you're interested in, I highly suggest you head over to my buddy's channel, Chris from the 740. He is always posting Palmetto State Armory deals, and I'm sure somewhere in there you're going to find a slide or something like that. So check that out. Support creators that need the support, and don't we all, really? But good buddy of mine, and so I want to throw some love his way. Check his channel out, and again, on his community tab and on his Instagram, things like that, he's routinely posting PSA deals, so check him out. Can I recommend this firearm to anybody? If you ask me what's a good, inexpensive self-defense firearm, no. If you ask me what's a good, inexpensive range toy, or something that's a starting platform that you can then upgrade into something that may be a good firearm, yes. So that's all just my perspective from a shooter's perspective, somebody that shoots tens of thousands of rounds a year. I've had my hands on almost every Glock aftermarket, or I'm sorry, every Glock knockoff or clone out there, shot almost every one of them. And so a lot of that comparison goes into that as well. But I appreciate everybody out there watching. Don't forget to hit like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit all notifications if you want more videos and honest content from me. And this was an honest, unbiased review of that firearm, no matter what anybody thinks. If you want to support the channel, there'll be a ton of ways to do that. Links down below. I'm going to link Chris's channel down below as well, because again, if you're into PSA stuff and you're looking for an inexpensive slide, I'm sure he's running deals at some point in time for that. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you later. This thing shoots like shit.